Hello, my fellow people of the plant. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Cannabinoid Connect podcast, your favorite podcast that includes industry-facing conversations with the industry's leading experts that aim to educate and inform the public regarding the plant's endless benefits. My guest today is Arshad Lasi. He's the CEO at Nirvana Group. Arshad, what's going on, man?
How's it going, Kevin?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Of course, of course. I'm excited to talk with you today because obviously the Oklahoma medical marijuana market is booming, right?
Yes,
And
exceptionally quickly
it's
growing here.
it's crazy. I mean, my wife and I were with a group of friends last month. We went to Broken Bow to spend the weekend out there at a cabin, and all along the way driving, I mean, I just saw medical dispensary after medical dispensary after medical dispensary. So let's start there. Let's talk about the explosive growth in Oklahoma, the so-called green rush, and what has caused this industry boom.
So, I mean, it's really interesting to see. So, Oklahoma legalized medical marijuana about 3 years ago, in 2018, through the passing of a bill called 788. And after that, within the next 8 months, you saw thousands of people applying for licenses because the cost of entry is so low. It's only $2,500 to get a license in the state. So since it's so cheap, so many people got licensed that, wanted to be a part of the industry and take their stab at it. And now we've got over 6,000 business licenses in the state, and there's dispensaries everywhere. There's more dispensaries than Starbucks, I think, in Oklahoma.
And so what has that done, like overall, in terms of like pricing and, high quality versus, your value products? Like, where does all that kind of fit in? Or is the market still trying to figure all that out and let it settle?
So in the beginning, prices were kind of high because the supply was limited. But what's been interesting to see here is because there's so many licenses and the competition is high, everyone's trying to sell their product or their vape cartridge or their edible or their gummy. You've got to keep getting better at what you're doing. And you've got to keep increasing the quality and the value you're bringing to the table while still being really competitive with price. So we do have one of the lowest wholesale prices in the country, I think. And it's caused a little bit of a price war between brands, but the ones that are being most successful are the ones that are able to maintain their value and provide the highest quality product to their customers.
Right. Yeah. And that's a good segue, because to dive a little deeper into that, I was going to ask you what, the opportunities and the challenges are with a market like Oklahoma. And, you touched on the challenges in terms of it's hyper competitive, right? And you're always kind of striving to be the best and produce the highest quality product. Is there any other challenges and maybe some opportunities that you want to call out?
Well, other challenges is that, hyper competitive is one thing, but the regulations are still changing. So you always kind of have to stay ahead of those and make sure that you position yourselves for the long term, where the regulations might be a little bit more lax now, but they're going to get a lot stricter. So you have to, be able to take on that change. But the opportunity is amazing because there's a huge population of patients. We've got over 400,000 patients. I think I read a statistic and it said 1 in 11 people has a medical card here. So there's always, and it's growing. People are always getting new medical cards. So it's really cool to see how you can capture those patients and kind of position them to appreciate your brand over others.
Right. Well, and let's talk about the criteria for this expansive medical program that Oklahoma has, because I know in Texas, the 87th legislative session met, and they did add more ailments to their limited medical program, right? But these are serious issues like cancer or things of that nature. So in Oklahoma, like how does someone go about applying, and what criteria do they need to fall under to get a license?
So on the medical card side, as a patient, the requirements or the prerequisite conditions, if you will, are pretty lax. So it's up to really the doctor who recommends you. If you feel like you have PTSD or anxiety or just physical pain, you're more than likely to get a recommendation from the doctor for a medical card. After which you submit the recommendation to the state and they mail you one out within 2 weeks. To get a commercial business license is, I think it's state residency along with a clean background check. And if you basically are able to pass those two biggest requirements, and you have a location and the city's approved your location, so on and so forth, you're able to apply for a commercial license there. And in the beginning, they were having to approve them within 30 days, but now they've changed that to give the state 90 days to review these processes and make sure they're giving them out the right way.
Got you. Okay. And then I guess last question to kind of wrap up just the overall, Oklahoma market. Talks of adult use recreational cannabis in the future. I mean, how far off are you guys from that, you think?
So, I mean, I think everyone here kind of wants it to go recreational. I think it's great for the economy, and it definitely promotes, more business for everyone. I think the state probably wants to get that done within the next 2 to 3 years. I think it's really important right now to get the medical market and the medical legislation kind of locked down and secure and get everyone into a flow. We're still waiting on metric to kick in here. So I think once those things are kind of done and they have a good foundation built, I think then the next step would make sense to be recreational.
I think that seems to be the move, right? Because if you look at Colorado, which was the first state to go adult use, I believe in what was it, 2014 or
I think
2012?
so.
I can't remember. But it was the first state, and they had such a comprehensive, expansive medical program before that. So it's almost like the policymakers were able to kind of see what was happening with this expansive medical program and then apply those learnings to the inevitable
Exactly.
recreational market, right? I mean, other states like the native state that I grew up in, New Mexico, they had a medical program, but it wasn't as expansive as Colorado's, and they've just gone rec. So they're kind of starting from scratch in terms of more consumers flooding in. And so, I mean, would you agree that Oklahoma
100%.
took that same approach that Colorado did?
I think they definitely did, and the value is definitely there because you're able to create a market, kind of test the waters, see what kind of legislation and regulations you need to make sure that things are being done in a safe and compliant way, especially for the consumers, right? Um, and once you've got that settled down and you know what needs to be done, then it's just adding in more licenses that have a wider variety of consumers to sell to.
Right, right. Got you. Well, let's talk about you, Arshad. So, like, tell us, about your background, and how you got to the point where you are, where you're the CEO at Nirvana Group.
Sure. So I'm pretty young. I'm still in college. I go to the University of Houston. So right now I kind of go back and forth between Tulsa and Houston.
Undergrad
Um,
or
Undergrad, yeah.
wow, okay,
So
yeah,
I'm in the
you're
business
busy.
program. I know. It's been that's been probably the toughest part of it is kind of managing both of those. But I definitely still want to graduate and get my degree.
Sure.
So that's kind of my background. My family started the Nirvana Group, got started with a smoke shop in about 2011. And my dad just had the one smoke shop, and then he grew it into a bigger smoke shop. And before cannabis legalized in Oklahoma, we were looking across the country to kind of get into the industry. We were very interested, and we went all over, went to Michigan and Massachusetts and Colorado and California, and nothing kind of clicked for us. So we take a break, and then we hear Oklahoma's going to talk about legalizing. So we start following that, and it legalizes, and we're really excited. So we get our licenses, and we open our first dispensary in January of 2019. Now about 2.5, 3 years later, we've got 8 dispensaries primed to be open. The eighth one in a month. We've expanded to 6 smoke shops. We've got our own grow, our own processing, our own kitchen, our own lab. So we've kind of blossomed into a pretty big vertically integrated cannabis company in the past 3 years.
Yeah, and that seems what most mid-sized to large operators are doing. They're looking to be vertically integrated and kind of control the whole supply chain, right? And
Definitely.
so, tell us about that journey. So you started off with dispensaries because your father owned a smoke shop previously. He had experience there, right, with the retail operations side.
Exactly.
So how did that evolve? Where did you pivot to next as the Nirvana Group was growing?
So it's kind of funny. At the same time that we got into cannabis, my dad was expanding the smoke shop side of things and getting into smoke shop wholesale. So we were kind of on the cusp of distribution and wholesale there. And we had this idea that if we were going to open 7, 8 dispensaries, we're going to have to be able to manage supply chain. So we thought about having our own wholesale company internally for our partners and our group of companies to kind of facilitate that. we called that Argent, and it was a good idea. So a lot of other dispensaries, a lot of our friends or colleagues who were also in the industry started using that wholesale company to buy their product because we were able to buy in bulk and get good prices. So that's kind of the next step we took, and we expanded that. So we now run one of the largest distribution companies in the state. We work with 30 brands, a lot of them national brands, and we sell to about 800 accounts throughout the state from east to west. So that's kind of the next step we took in our journey.
Wholesale. And then from there, was it cultivation, extraction? Like, where
We
did you?
started cultivation and extraction
Yeah.
simultaneously, and then we started building out a kitchen. And we've actually got this beverage line that we just launched called Liquid Leaf. So it's a THC infused juice, and we've been able to make it fast acting and pretty quickly bioavailable, and it's sublingual, so it has a pretty good effect to it. So that's kind of the other avenues we expanded into late last year, and then
Yeah.
we'll be building upon that this year.
Well, yeah, and let's dive deeper into that because it's clear that the cannabis infused beverage market is booming, right? And that's just on the rise. And I just recently had Travis Tharp on from Keef Brands, and we talked a lot about it. So, as y'all have recently launched Liquid Leaf, what has it been like? I mean, there been a lot of trial and error in terms of formulation and ensuring that the cannabinoids are mixing, with through the emulsion process, and what are some of the
Definitely. I mean,
findings?
it's been an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Our the gentleman Ethan Morris, who kind of created this recipe, this proprietary blend that we use to infuse our beverages with. It's taken him a long time to come up with this formulation, and definitely a lot of trial and error. And now we've got a pretty good recipe, and we're still evolving and trying to make it better. But the best part about it is, a lot of beverages will clump up, or the THC molecules kind of split apart and start to settle in the juice. We've been able to avoid that and still get a good shelf life. So right now we've only got the 3 SKUs. They're 100 milligrams each, but we're looking to get a new label launched called Higher Tides, which will have higher milligrams, and that should be coming out in the next 30 to 45 days.
Nice, nice. And what other innovations are you seeing within the cannabis edible or even beverage side of things within Oklahoma specifically?
Well, I think we're moving a little bit from distillate edibles to full spectrum or live resin ones. So live resin gummies and chocolates. We're also kind of experimenting and doing some R&D for ourselves with live resin beverages. So I think that's going to be the next move here is moving from a very distillate heavy market to a more full spectrum live resin, broad spectrum market.
Yeah, that seems to be the trend, right? Like having that whole plant, the full spec, that entourage effect, and because that seems, I guess, from the anecdotal evidence that we have or the research that's been done, is that that's kind of the most medically beneficial for our bodies, right? Instead of just isolating cannabinoids.
Exactly. I think using it as a whole plant is how it was intended, and it's how we should consume it.
Right. And speaking of cannabinoid therapeutics, let's talk about, Nirvana's medical dispensaries specifically. So you said you opened up how many dispensaries at this point? Six
So we've
or
got 7 open,
seven
and
open?
we just opened the 7th one about a month ago, and our 8th one should be open in the next month or so.
And so, yeah, well, what do those patients look like? What is the demographics of your consumer base?
So we are located in working class, middle class areas. So our patients we try to provide a lot of value products, and we try to get even higher end products at value prices for them. So we try to serve a wide variety of patients, and we definitely get, patients who are looking for more luxury products, and patients who are looking for more value products. And we kind of we cast a wide net, and we just, want to service and provide good customer service and prices to everyone.
I would imagine that the data insights really help inform those decisions, right? I mean, buying behaviors, who these people are, what they're purchasing, how frequent they're purchasing to kind of
Definitely.
make those decisions.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Well, what other expansion plans do you have? I mean, it's obvious that y'all are focused on the Oklahoma market. Is that where you're gonna stay, or do you see yourselves eventually moving outside of Oklahoma to other states that are going adult use or even medical at this point?
So we definitely have some other states in mind. How we move into those states is kind of the conversation we're having right now. We've got a couple of brands we'd love to license out. We've got some great proprietary recipes, especially in the beverage, that we think would be very successful in some other states, adult use and medical. But we definitely have some plans for expansion in Oklahoma. We'd like to create. We're rebranding a lot of our dispensaries now, so we're going through some architectural changes on the outside and the inside to give it a to make some flagship stores essentially. So that's kind of our first step. Is hopefully by the end of this year we'll have our first location complete through a whole rebrand and remodel. And if that model works for us, we're going to expand that across all the other locations and hopefully get some new ones opened up. We want to have about a dozen dispensaries by the end of quarter two of 2022.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, you guys are moving, and there's a solid plan in place, and it's just kind of working toward those objectives to get it done, right?
Exactly.
What do people tell you in school when they're like, "Wait, this guy's the CEO of vertically integrated cannabis company"? Like, what are those conversations like?
So I mean, I try to keep it pretty low key when I'm in Houston when I go to school.
Is it
Like
is
my
it because of the stigma? Is it pretty bad out there?
It's
Like,
I think people are coming around to it. Texas kind of decriminalized cannabis possession and use. So there's definitely there's been a change in the culture and the environment, and people are coming around to it, and they're kind of becoming more open to it, especially with like CBD and the hemp bill passing and stuff. So there's it's the market's definitely changed, but it's just it's an interesting reaction. A lot of people think it's really cool, and a lot of them are kind of surprised. But it's not something that I've been super marketable about or posting about or anything. So it's just kind of now, hopefully, after a couple of these podcasts, we'll see how that kind of changes, and we'll see.
yeah, you might be out there now. Who knows? I don't.
Right?
But it must be like surreal because you're going to school in Houston, and then when you travel across the Red River to Oklahoma, it's like night and day. It's like a whole different world when it comes
Completely different.
to
Completely different.
cannabis regulation, right? And the acceptance and the openness of it. And so,
Oh yeah.
like, how has that experience been for you?
So definitely have to be careful when you travel, right? With what you have on you. But it's been really cool because Houston's kind of where I was raised, and it's where a lot of my family is, and a lot of my friends are. And it's a very different environment because the size of Texas versus the size of Oklahoma, population wise, is pretty unique. So it's nice. It's very nice to come to Oklahoma. It's beautiful here, and it's a lot quieter than Houston is. Definitely, the traffic is better. But it's really cool because the culture with cannabis here is so different that it's pretty ingrained into everything that happens here. Restaurants and bars and sporting events and sporting, everything has cannabis associated with it. Cannabis companies sponsor every kind of public event here or private event as well. Plus, there's dispensaries at every corner, so it's a pretty big cultural change when you go state to state like that.
And I would imagine you could smell it in the air because people are just toking like outside the bar, just like they would for like a cigarette break, right?
Yeah, so that's another cool thing here is you can consume cannabis wherever you can consume tobacco. So definitely when you're going down and there's a bunch of bars around you, there's a lot of cannabis smell.
Yeah.
It's pretty lax. People have just stopped turning heads and getting all worried about it. It's pretty cool to just people taking a walk and they've got a joint in their mouth.
Right. Yeah. Whereas like here where I'm in Dallas, when I smell it, I'm just like nodding my head like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, someone's out there. I can smell
having a
it,
good time, right?
but but it's not as like as frequent, I guess, of course, as Oklahoma. Uh, but I get your point about you got to be careful when you're driving from state because I mean after the legislative session in Texas that concentrates bill that was presented it didn't pass. So I believe that any THC concentrate like a vape pen it's a felony. I mean if
Yeah.
you're caught with it, right? So it's pretty serious still. And then we saw that Lakers player Alex Caruso was arrested in Texas at the Texas airport for a grinder in his bag. So
Wow.
Texas is still, yeah, they're still highly regulating and enforcing the law here, which is it's just kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
Uh, But let's one last question. Let's talk about you. So, like your relationship with cannabis. You said at the beginning your dad owned a smoke shop. So it seems like, I mean, I'm just assuming your family's open to smoking and
So
that kind of culture, or
we were so smoke shops are called like counterculture. So we would go to trade shows and they would be like counterculture trade shows, which
right?
was always kind of interesting to me. Um, and I definitely like loved being a part of that and helping my dad out. And then initially in the transition, my parents were definitely hesitant to experiment and try things, but now they've come around to the idea of it, and they've enjoyed gummies and stuff for medical use when they need to sleep or they're in a lot of pain. But they don't really use it anything more than that. But it's been a cool transition to kind of see my dad going from someone who didn't really know what flower was or concentrates were, or vapes were, or THC or Delta 9, what all the little things, the detailed things were, to now when we're purchasing flower, we can pick up a piece of bud and kind of just know how it was grown and the quality of it and what it's worth. And it's been really interesting to see that transition because now he's an expert at it, even though he's not a consumer. So it's
Right.
pretty cool.
I can relate in that way. I mean, this journey with my parents, them seeing my relationship with the plant for the last 15 plus years, and it started out first with kind of disapproval and no, and then openness, and then now that it's becoming more legitimized, and regulated, like the state that they live, New Mexico, it's legal now. So next year they go online with sales.
Yeah.
So it's been a whole kind of education process, a removing of the stigma process, and in some cases, there's been times where I've been able to consume, with my dad, and that has been just a special bond that's unlike anything else.
No, definitely.
Yeah. Well, what do you want to wrap up? Like, I'm going to leave the floor to you, Arshad. So, what's top of mind for you? What do you want to leave the audience with before we hang up here?
Well, I mean, I'm honored and privileged to be to be a part of your show,
Of
and
course.
we're really excited to see where we can take this company and what's next for us to come.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to following the progress. And where can people, follow on social media if they want to learn more about your company and what you guys
So
do?
there's our social medias like Nirvana Dispensaries, and Argent Cannabis. So those are the two big ones, or nirvanacompanies.com, where they can find all of our info and our press releases and updates.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for your time today, Arshad.
Thank you for having me.
Get back to hitting the books. Good luck on finals. I don't know even if we're in school at this point or not, but good luck with what you're doing and keep kicking butt in Oklahoma, man.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right. You too. And thanks for listening, guys. Bye.